It's been called the world's worst industrial disaster, but the description barely captures what happened in Bhopal 35 years ago. Bhopal is the capital of the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. In the intervening night of December the 2nd and 3rd, 1984, poisonous gas leaked from a pesticide plant, spreading rapidly across the city. In that first night, according to some estimates, more than 3,000 people died. That number would soon go up to 15,000. Those who survived didn't have it much better. Here's the words of two who lived through that night. Aziza says, "I was 2 months pregnant at the time. I had a miscarriage right there in the middle of the street. I was unable to control my bowels and the feces ran down my legs." Champa Devi Shukla says, "It felt like somebody had filled our bodies up with red chilies. Our eyes had tears coming out, noses were watering, we had froth in our mouths." Survivors continue to suffer gynaecological disorders, cancer, birth defects, among a long list of health problems. But it doesn't stop there. They also need to find the strength to receive adequate compensation, healthcare, above all, justice.
For decades, they have been campaigning. Some still living with their injuries. Others still bearing their grief. That night, everything was destroyed. My sons and daughter-in-law died, and my leg was amputated. I have to drag myself around. These killers did not heed anything. Why have they not been brought to court? Why haven't they been hanged? They are responsible for this. It was December 1984 when 40 tons of deadly methyl isocyanate, known as MIC gas, escaped a pesticide factory in the Indian city of Bhopal. Within the first few hours, 3,000 people were dead, some dying in their own homes. Hundreds of thousands more were injured, many of them children. Over the years, the death toll has risen. Official estimates stand at around 15,000. The company responsible, Union Carbide, has never faced prosecution, but it did agree a $470 million payout in 1989. Campaigners say the company, which is now owned by Dow Chemicals, must pay much more in compensation, including to the families whose children have been born with brain damage and with disabilities.
The people have been waiting for appropriate health care. A standard medical treatment protocol is needed. That's not yet available. And finally, in some ways, the most important question is, where is the justice?
The question many have been asking for 35 years. And still, it seems, there is no answer.
Joining me for more is Rachna Dhingra, an activist working with survivors of the Bhopal tragedy. She joins me now from Bhopal. Rachna, good to have you on the program. You've been working with the survivors for quite some time. What are their immediate needs?
Thank you for actually airing this thing on Bhopal today. Currently, this is probably the biggest ongoing corporate massacre in Bhopal, and people have only gotten about $300 in compensation. The corporations responsible for the disaster, Union Carbide, Dow Chemical, their criminal liabilities are still pending. There is thousands of tons of toxic waste that is still sitting inside the factory and outside the factory, which has contaminated the groundwater of more than 100,000 people. And Dow Chemical refuses to clean up. And because of this toxic contamination, a lot of children are being affected, as well as their parents who have consumed this water for years. And as far as the gas disaster is concerned, people are really sick in Bhopal. There are 10 times more cancer rates. There are just now we have come across a study that the Indian Council of Medical Research was doing, which basically showed that there are 7.5 times more birth defects in gas-affected mothers than unexposed mothers.
The tragedy is there, the evidence is there, as you have presented today. Do you think adequate responsibility has at all been fixed for this disaster?
Absolutely not. These are the two most powerful chemical corporations, and they have the support of the most powerful government, the U.S. government, who has been supporting them from day one. And they also have support of the Indian government, or who has no political will in holding them accountable. The U.S. Department of Justice has not been able to serve summons to Dow Chemical, and Indian government has been asking them to do that for the last 5 years. Just like they did with Warren Anderson, who was the chairman of Union Carbide and was responsible for killing people in Bhopal. He was never extradited from US because the US government never gave a damn about its criminal liability in India. And the same things we see as far as the cleanup of the toxic waste is concerned, whereas the Department of Justice is very keen in holding corporations like BP accountable for what they did in US. But when it comes to Bhopal, they have a completely double standards. And in the name of foreign investment, people of Bhopal are considered expendable. And even in India, we have seen in the last 35 years, irrespective of the governments in power, whether it is BJP or Congress, they have always sided with the corporations and not with the victims.
What is at the core of this, Rachna? Are people's lives, do they not matter?
First of all, I just want to say that this is not something that happened 35 years ago. People are dying. People are being born with birth defects till today. And yes, so people in Bhopal are considered expendable in the name of foreign investment. And that has pretty much been spelled out for us. When it came to extraditing Warren Anderson, people like, Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell said that sending Anderson over would send shockwaves in the investment community. And now when Dow Chemical is being asked to appear in Bhopal courts, we have people like Hillary Clinton and Trump supporting them that they should not appear in India, and using all the pressure that they have with the Indian government to make sure that they are not held accountable.
Right. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, but thank you so much for joining us, Rachna Dhingra.
Thank you.